Peace, brothers and sisters. Thanks for tuning in to the very first episode of my new YouTube series, Change Gonna Come, where we will be discussing the current condition of the black community and addressing and exploring the causes which support those conditions, and most importantly, the solutions to rectifying it. I'm your hostess, Amir Whitaker, actress and blogger, and here's my co-host.
Marcus Alexander Champion, photographer, entrepreneur.
And we have with us a very special guest today, Ambassador of Justice and Black Nationalist, Brother Abdul Rahman. Thank you so much for being here today. We're honored to have you here to share your knowledge and insight about such a detrimental topic.
Yes, thank you very much. I would also like to say it is a great honor and a privilege to be hosting your first of many series of this crucial and critical discussion. And it is very, very unique that we have people such as yourself that are, and Marcus of course, that are genuinely concerned about addressing the problems. And this is a problem that just seems not to have had the type of attention that is deserving of. So hopefully, as we begin to embark upon this discussion, that we will come up with answers, solutions, and we can clearly identify the problems that have been haunting not just our people in this generation, but this is a 400-year problem as we have been affected here in this societal order. But it's a 6,000 problem that is globally, that has been happening ever since the advent of a people that have been able to exercise great influence, power, and authority over those people who have not been able to do that.
Yes, I agree. And I'm glad you mentioned that when you said about it not getting the attention that it deserves, because that's exactly what this episode is about. It's about the independence and the liberation of the black nation, but also why amongst the greater society this isn't addressed the way it should be. I personally feel like people view it as like an inconvenience rather than an issue. So when I say that, it's like the winter. Like when it's snowing outside, you're inconvenienced because you have to plow the snow, you have to shovel and all of that. But it's just a part of nature, it's a part of life. It's not much you can do about it. I feel like that's how a lot of people view white supremacy and anti-blackness. Like it's just inherent with life. And it doesn't have to be that way, and it's not supposed to be that way.
I agree. White supremacy is a concept, and it's a concept that was constructed by a particular people, and it has no legitimacy in the universal order of cosmic correctness or cosmic truth. White supremacy, as I've said on so many occasions, is nothing other than organized crime. It's organized crime politically, economically, philosophically, theologically. It is one of the most powerful concepts that has ever been constructed to disenfranchise people of color and to keep these people in a form of subjugation.
Mm-hmm. I agree. You have anything you want to add to that?
I think, like what you said, it's in addition to being an inconvenience, it's a myriad of issues. It's an inconvenience, but also it's out of sight, out of mind. People feel like if it's not directly in front of me, then it's really not as bad as it may seem. In addition to, brainwashing, the media has really put us in a mental state where we feel like the world isn't as it is. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the biggest things. I think the media brainwashing is one of the biggest things, because we see entertainers like we see LeBron, we see Beyonce, all these entertainers with money and these different circles, and we think, oh, it's all good, we can get there, we can do this, we can do that, but we fail to understand the actual issue. Like we live in a life and death society, and we really don't understand that.
Yeah, and I feel like for black people, I don't understand how it could ever be out of sight, out of mind, because it's never out of sight. I feel like you are either in denial or you're just really that mentally gone, because as a black person, you are facing microaggressions all the time, and you just either, like I said, in denial about it, or you're just not aware, because it's impossible to be out of sight, out of mind, because you can't take off your skin color, and I don't want to.
Well, I agree wholeheartedly with Brother Marcus when he stated that the media is a co-collaborator with white supremacy. They are a silent co-partner through propagandizing our people in such a way where they can put us asleep with entertainment. And we have to use entertainment for entertainment into a sociological political consciousness. But we don't have control over mass media as those who are interested in perpetuating white supremacy. So again, the media is a silent co-partner that tries to take a neutral position of being liberals, as though they have no desire to see white supremacy affect anyone. But this is a great falsehood that the media has been able to project, but they too are silent co-partners in white supremacy. You have those, white supremacy actually exists on 3 different levels. You have the perpetrators, and those are the intellectuals of white supremacy. Your heads of state, your congressmen, your Nevadicans, your popes, your queens, those people, private white families. These are the architectures of white supremacy. Some people you don't never see in public. These are the most sophisticated, the most intellectual, the most notorious of all. And they are the ones who perpetrate the concept. The perpetrators, the collaborators. The collaborators are your big business, your IBM, your Xerox, your Shell Oil Company, Chevron, your multi-million-dollar corporations. They said, wow, white supremacy is big business. So they are interested in what proceeds can come about as a result of it. So they too are a part of the infrastructure of white supremacy. So you have the perpetrators, big business, our collaborators, and then you have the benefactors. The benefactors are those whites who are powerless, but they benefit from white supremacy just by having priority status when it comes to employment, education, this, that, and the other. So your white person that is working at the post office, a school teacher, or working in the labor market, they are the direct recipients and the beneficiaries as to what white supremacy can do for anyone who has white outer appearance. So you have the perpetrators, the collaborators, and the benefactors. Those whites who may project that they're not interested in seeing white supremacy as a political policy, but they benefit, and they never challenge white supremacy as aggressively as they should and could, because they too are silent co-partners.
Most definitely.
Yeah,
Most definitely.
I agree 100% with that. So before we get into the meat of our discussion, which we'll be talking about true independence and liberation for the Black nation, as well as the lack of urgency amongst the greater society, I want to get started, as we do every episode, with a brief current event, because like my acting coach says, everything changes everything. And as Brother Rockman was saying earlier, this world is a constant change, in this world of illusion. So there's things that are constantly going on. Like I was saying, Black people were always facing micro and macro aggression. So I think it's important to just, continue to bring it to awareness for the people who want to turn a blind eye. So this week we will be discussing Congresswoman Maxine Waters had to cancel 2 speaking engagements because she received death threats in Texas and Alabama. Pretty much she had called out a public protest against the Trump administration, which many of people have done. Let's not forget white women had a whole bunch of, millions of white women had a march against him. But Congresswoman Maxine Waters received death threats. They threatened to shoot her, to lynch her, and things of that nature. What do you guys think of that?
I think you kind of hit the nail on the head in that I think it's not just because she's Black. I think with Congresswoman Waters, because you've had the Cory Bookers, you've had the Kamala Harrises also say things against Trump, but when it comes to Maxine Waters, she's one of the few that actually has done some things for Black people. Definitely not perfect. Definitely there's room for improvement, but she has been a clear advocate in some way. These other Congress people like a Cory Booker, like a Kamala Harris, they focus on every issue but specifically Black issues. And I think because of that, that's why with her, it's not just talking about her, but we're going to threaten to kill her too. I think that's what it is.
Oh, now I would say that threats on anyone's life has to be taken seriously if this is actual facts. But our lives have been threatening each and every day by the same system that seems to be threatening Mrs. Waters' life. Now, I think that she should be equally concerned with the legitimate threat of the disenfranchisement of the black man that doesn't have the media attention, that doesn't have the resources, that doesn't have the notoriety nor popularity. There are no big I's and little U's. So I think that the public should be just as concerned as what's happening to the man on Crenshaw, what's happening to the man in Harlem, what's happening to the man in Watts, south side of Detroit. White supremacy is a national and global concept, and every non-white person is on a victim list. Mm-hmm. So I think that we should all be concerned and not have the type of stargazing or personality worshiping as a politician, or this is an actor, or this is an entertainer. All life is precious, and we should be concerned with any and everyone. Now, getting back to Maxine Waters. Maxine Waters, number one, she's a politician. She's a congressional woman. She is a part of the social order of this society. She's a part of it. She administrates the ideas of the ongoing power structure that she's employed by. She's an employee. She's taken an oath to defend the Constitution, the bylaws, and the preambles of this society against foreign and domestic enemies. I would be considered a domestic enemy to Maxine Waters because I'm a black nationalist. She doesn't embrace revolutionary black nationalism because this would isolate her support from those who support her campaign. Now, I want to be able to prove everything that I say so there wouldn't be conjecture or something that I'm just contriving or imagining. Maxine Waters is a very influential individual in the community. There was a conglomeration called Kmart or Walmart that existed in the Baldwin Hills area, and they was trying to establish one in Inglewood. And Walmart doesn't allow the unions to take part in regulating their business affairs. Mm-hmm. The unions give large sums of money to Mrs. Waters' political campaign. The unions place Maxine Waters in a position that she outwardly blocked Walmart from coming in to Inglewood and as well as certain areas in her district.
So that's what happened to in the Baldwin Hills Mall?
Yes, ma'am. Now, Walmart is not fair in all of its business affairs with respect to the people whom it employs. Mm-hmm. But however, Walmart has what is called an economic reality. They were able to employ many high school students with summer jobs and this, that, or the other. Now, if they can make the provisions that they were making, they were able to start black people or non-white people on the road of trade and commerce and business, even if it was a humble beginning, knowing how to operate that cash register, knowing how to stock the shelves, knowing how to make sure the custodian work, everything is organized. And this was a preparatory stage as to helping them understand the importance of responsibility. Mm-hmm. They were establishing an economic reality for many unemployed high school students as well as junior high or middle school students. But because they were not unionized, Maxine Waters gave more allegiance to the union than she looked at with respect to the hundreds of people that Kmart or Walmart was employing. She didn't take a moral position and says, listen, I don't have an economic reality that can employ 200 or 300 of high school students with summer jobs. You, the union, you have an economic reality, but you don't have the will to establish the type of employment agency that can employ my people. So I cannot block Walmart because there's greater good that they're doing just by providing an economic reality for those people who have no skills at all, for those people who are not educated to be able to acquire employment that would bring them in the type of income that is consistent with what income should be, with the inflation rate and this, that, and the other. So the union strategized, and Maxine Waters collaborated, and they blocked Walmart. Now, the unions, their primary objective was to infiltrate Walmart, charge the employees union dues, then shake down Walmart by threats of strikes. Well, if you do not do this, we will encourage the labor to strike. If they strike, it affects the economy of Walmart. So the unions are not interested in the economic condition of the disenfranchisement of the urban community. They're interested in how much can we get these people to pay union dues to the union, and how can we threaten the corporations and shake them down. Maxine, we need you to help us, and we will fund your political campaign to help ensure that you are seated in the next election. If Miss Waters had the legitimate aspirations of the suffering masses of her people at heart, she would have said, I will constantly speak to the heads of Walmart to see to it that there's a fairer policy, to make sure that there's not a lopsided policy, but these jobs are needed. So I weigh the pros and cons, and the immediacy of them being able to employ 200 or 300 people means more than what you are contributing to me financially. So I cannot oppose this business, but because they can do something that I can't do. They can do something that you can do, but not are willing to do. So I must rule for the ongoing economic reality that Walmarts can provide. And then I'll put together a constituent of individuals, and we will insist that the heads of Walmart, even though they're paying minimum wage, a little of something is better than a whole lot of nothing. And there was nothing that she replaced the unemployment condition of the people. There was the unions replaced it with nothing. So you have many of our people languishing out in the streets, thinking about ways and means by which they can establish an economic reality. And when you're ill-educated, the only thought that comes to your mind, the only thought that you entertain is a criminal idea that lands you up in prison. Because you're poor, broke, raggedy, hungry, naked, and outdoors. And the first law of nature is self-preservation. So it breeds a criminal mindset. And it leads many of our people into this institution called prison. The prison industrial complex. It's a big business. So Miss Waters have to really think about some of the things that she has done in the past. I mean, we have to mature as black people to understand that black is just not what you say. It's not a concept that we can articulate and espouse when it's convenient for us to do so. Black is color, is culture, is consciousness, is universal and cosmic connection. And we have to function on the moral issue of right being right. Miss Waters has done a lot of positive things within the community, but there's a duality here. And as I was saying previously, the first time in history that someone has come as close to politics of change as Barack Obama did. He became the nominee of the Democratic Party. He won that. Prior to him being elected as the head of state of this society, Maxine Waters criticized this black man as being inexperienced. She didn't support the black concept of cultural connects that she seems to always be advocating. The time that she had an opportunity was to look at this bright, shining star, Barack Obama. But in her mind, he was a long shot. Obama didn't have an economic reality. He didn't have tangible assets. She thought he didn't have creative and innovative ideas. So she criticized him as being ill-prepared. She chose to back Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton and her husband was the architecture of the three-strike law that landed once again so many non-white people in prison. Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton decided to play baseball with the lives of oppressed people. Maxine Waters never said a mumbling word against this unholy alliance that she formed with the Clinton family. And as they finalized the three-strike law, many black men who had previous offenses in this society end up doing 25 to life in prison as a result of what Bill Clinton did and what his wife co-signed. So I never heard Maxine state that was a lack of political experience on their part. I never heard her criticize the fact that her close quarter friends, the Clintons, have placed so many of our people in an awkward position in these prison industrial complex. So it's very clear that most politicians are opportunists. Whatever opportunity that presents itself at that time that is more advantageous for them personally, then that's who they would flow with. Now, if she refused to support one of her own, and this was a historical event in the history of time, which will be recorded, it recorded her as a non-supporter of one of the people from her ethnic heritage that was trying to do good. Now, was Barack Obama perfect? No, I don't say that he did everything that we had perhaps anticipated him doing, but Obama was progressive. He wasn't perfect, and he wasn't advocating that he was a black nationalist or this, that, or the other. In essence, Obama was saying in a symbolic language, listen, I can only provide temporary coverage. As the head of state of this society, there's certain things that will slow them down that I will speak out against. And he spoke out against a lot of the police killings of the young youth, and they criticized him as saying, you have no right to this is a domestic issue, you have no right to comment on what local law enforcement is doing. In essence, they was telling Obama, look, we hear nothing about you being the chief executive officer of this society. And Mr. Obama should have understood, listen, as the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, because as the president, you are the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. That includes the Navy, the Army, the National Guard, the local police, anyone that have arms and have the ability to force the policy of legality. He's the commander-in-chief. So he can criticize anything that any state employee, especially a police officer or race soldier, that is doing. Once he did that, he was met with a barrage of criticism. So, in essence, what I'm saying, Ms. Waters never backed not only Obama, there has been other governors that she did not support. So what is this thing of blackness? See, blackness is not just a word that we can throw out there when it's politically advantageous for us to do so. Blackness is an ongoing concept of originality. And I don't even like to use the term, the Caucasian has color-coded humanity. And it is very, very difficult for me personally to use the juvenile language of black, brown, red, yellow in reference to the human family. We are really speaking about originality. When we talk about the black man, we're talking about the original mind, the original man, and the original concepts that governs life itself. So when I say, when I use the term black, I'm just using an adjective to describe a noun. But as I stated earlier, black is color, culture, consciousness, universal and cosmic connection. If we don't function on the moral issue of what the universe requires of us, then we are not in sequence with true originality. And that's what we're seeking. We're seeking truth, we're seeking originality, and we're seeking perfection into that conglomeration of principles. So simply because a person have dark skin doesn't automatically qualify them as being saints in the struggle. So we have to ask, why would one deny 300 or 400 or thousands of people of employment of her own cultural background at the bequest of unions? Unions are racist organizations themselves. See, they don't have a black people or so-called black people at the head of any union that controls the wealth that unions are able to shake down other businesses, the monies that they're able to extract from other businesses, the union dues that they force the laborers to pay them. That's another corporate structure of racism and white supremacy that makes billions of dollars economically to help perpetuate white supremacy. And you have black people who are in cahoots with that, and they're like mercenaries. A mercenary is a hired killer or a person that creates conflict. He doesn't care about the right or wrong of the thing. A mercenary wants to know, how much are you willing to pay me to administrate your ideas? So we have people of color who are nothing but mercenaries that are interested in nothing other than the acquisition of material conquest, the money. See, money is not the way. Money is only a means, and perhaps is one of the most effective means to bring about change, but we can't be under the money, we got to be over the money. And most of our people, unfortunately and regrettably, are under the money and not over the money. You have athletes and entertainers alike that have allowed the false god of materialism or money to govern their decision making. But there are people of our people who refuse to allow that to happen. You have your Tommy Smiths, you have your Muhammad Alis, you have those individual personalities that understood that the principle should never be under profit. That profit is here, principle is here. So those are the voice that we would want to champion our cause. Those are the voice that becomes the voice for the voiceless. Those are the ones that represent the legitimate aspirations of the suffering masses of our people, and those are the ones that I would think qualifies for our support. Again, our beloved sister Maxine Waters, I think that she needs to confer with some of the critical thinkers, because there have been decisions that have been decided upon that were not the best decisions. And there's many other things that I can go into with respect to the dynamics of that particular personality that I don't think time would allow. But if I were to share some things, it would be very disturbing as to what some of the miscalculated decisions that have been found in her policies as a congresswoman. But getting back to the issue with Donald Trump, Mr. Trump and Mrs. Waters have been engaging in a lot of verbal gymnastics as it has been. Now, again, Donald Trump is an individual. Donald Trump he represents a cultural expression of many white, especially white males, that he feels has now become the new minority. So he assures them that he can make America great again, which means ensuring that the white man gets back in a position, a dictatorial position, to wherein he can capture the imagination of non-white people and begin to rule as their forefathers once ruled. So they, being emotional, they step behind Mr. Trump, knowing that he's not a truly qualified intellectual. He's not a sophisticated politician. He's a Caucasian that has an economic reality. So they back him simply by the fact that he can appeal to their passions of making America great again. Now, I would have to ask the question, when was America great? Was she great when she was bringing our people here across the Atlantic Ocean? Was she great when she totally annihilated the natives that were here in this country called Indians? Was she great when she dropped an atomic bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki? Was she great when she orchestrated the murder of Patrice Lumumba of the Congos, who was fighting the Belgians? Was she great when she undermined Muammar Gaddafi? Was she great when she organized a coup in Iran to overthrow Premier Mohammad Mossadegh, who was the legal representative of the Iranian people, who became the first elected official in Iran? Prior to that, they had monarchies, kings. But this is the first elected official. And when he nationalized the oil in Iran that was controlled by American and British Petroleum Company, the United States and England organized a coup to overthrow Mossadegh, and they placed Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, the Shah of Iran. They placed him in Iran, and through him they were able to cripple the Iranian people, so much so that every other Iranian began to have serious health issues based upon the disenfranchisement of what the Shah was willing to do to his own people. So you have the Shah mentality right within the cultural circle of our people and other people. You always have those people who are interested in money, and they put profit over principle. Same thing in Cuba. When Batista was the ruler of Cuba, he was sucking the blood and killing his own people at the bequest of the United States and England. Cuba used to be like a Las Vegas to America, where when you wanted to gamble, when you wanted to have free access to the people to exploit them, Cuba was a playhouse. But out of the hurt and pains of that condition, the birth of the yearning of the Cuban people produced a person called Fidel Castro. And out of that hurt and pain, he said enough is enough. And he brought about a change in the condition of the condition of the Cuban people. And Mr. Baptista, who was a Cuban, was utterly destroyed. And America was forced out of Cuba. And now the Cubans today breathe freer than they ever breathed in the history of their existence. Is Cuba perfect? No. But it's on the course of perfection. So we got to understand the atrocity, the notorious mindset of those people who administrate, orchestrate, and perpetuate white supremacy. They will stop at nothing. And as I said before, white supremacy is a global concept.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, there you have it for the current event. He said a mouthful. I just feel like, as far as Maxine Waters or any black person in the public image, I feel like those white people who are threatening her, they probably are not even aware of her, the whole Walmart situation or her lack of the cultural and cosmic correctness. I think they are just going by literally because she's black and she's opposing Trump and his ideology that like you said, a lot of white men are emotionally embracing.
Okay. Now, I share that same concern with you, and if it's actual facts, I don't condone any of what is being constructed around Maxine Waters, because all life is precious, and no one should be allowed to create an atmosphere to auction off the existence of the life of our people. But on the other hand, a lot of times, when people are in this political world, they take positions that will ultimately lead them to the national or place them on the world stage or the national stage. So as she and Mr. Trump engage in this type of hostile exchange, automatically now she becomes noted nationally. Now, is that being done because perhaps she wants to run for a senator seat or the governor of California or even the president? See, we don't know the hidden agenda of why people do the things that they do. But this certainly is projecting her and giving her national, and international attention. And with this attention, she can use that to express her desire to become a governor or run for the next election. This is media coverage that she doesn't have to pay for if it is not. If it is legitimate, I support her in her defense of this unjust atmosphere that's being created by the Trump administration. But if it is just to project attention to get her name on the international, on the world stage by opposing someone who is on the world stage, automatically when there's a dispute, then now she becomes a voice that people are listening to internationally. And with that international influence, it can garner more resources economically. It can garner greater influence. It can garner many things. If is a preposition, if that is what the objective is, I can't support that. If she is genuinely concerned about the affairs of all people, and black people in particular, as to the criminal conduct of Mr. Trump and what his administration is trying to do, she deserves the support of all of our people here and abroad. Because it takes great courage to stand up against a head of state and begin to point out the areas that he's consistently inconsistent in when it comes to justice for the citizens of this society.
All right, well, there you all have it for our current event segment. Now we're going to get straight into the topic of discussion. I want to start out by saying anybody, regardless of their race, their color, their religion, or anything of that nature, with any sense of elevated awareness or consciousness, all share the same common desire for a universal shift in the human consciousness. Even people who aren't considered quote-unquote enlightened. That's why when you see on social media so many people complain like, oh, everyone thinks they're a guru, or so many people trying to be influential. What I personally believe is that the human race, everyone, they yearn for this shift in human consciousness, and they can't quite put their finger on what's not right with the universe, but they know that something isn't right and something needs to be changed and something needs to be done. I personally feel like in order for us to experience that shift in human consciousness that we want to experience universally, we cannot get there without addressing the plight of the black members of the human family. And there have been people in the past who have proposed like well-intended and, thought out ideas surrounding a solution, but no one has been quite able to put their finger on it or was able to gain the embracement of the greater majority of that solution. And in my humble opinion, we can't reach that solution until we address white supremacy, which breeds anti-blackness. Because there can never be a healing in the black community while we are still being countered by anti-blackness. And so I just pretty much feel like, as a society, we need to, as a society collectively and actively address this issue of white supremacy, not for the sake of being confrontational or to be, troublesome, but the fact of the matter is, if we want to get to the other side of that human consciousness and that shift that we want to experience, we have to start where the human life began, which is with the original people who just also happen to be in, the disadvantaged condition. So I have Brother Rockmine here today to answer a few questions that I have, and Marcus as well, concerning this way, because like I said before, I don't have all the answers, but I definitely have all the questions. And I just feel like, for me, I want to get to the bottom of what can be done for the black community. So I'm very honored to have people like Brother Rockmine and, future guests who I intend to have to, share their wisdom and their insight with me about how we as a people can reach our independence and our liberation like, America has. So my first question for you is, do you believe or do you agree with the notion that we can experience this universal shift in the human consciousness without addressing the plight of the black members of the human family?
I do agree. And as I've always said, no problem can be solved until the root problem of racism and white supremacy is adequately addressed. Because white supremacy is a concept. and is a concept that is perhaps one of the most powerful concepts in the known universe, because no one has been able to eradicate it. And it is an idea, a combination of ideas that exists in the 9 areas of human activity. There's 9 major areas that the human family are really involved in. And those 9 areas of people activities, let me say, are economics, entertainment, education, labor law, religion, politics, sex, and war. Those are 9 major areas. And we find that racism has its strength in the 9 major areas of people activity. And it is institutionalized. It is within the social fabric of these 9 major areas of people activities. People are currently active in economics, education, entertainment. They're working labor, law, politics, procreating or sex, and war, religion. These are 9 major areas. And he has institutionalized this concept in the 9 major areas, which affects, as you say, the human race. Well, I don't like to use the term race because race implies a beginning and it implies an ending. The black man has no beginning, he has no ending. But there is a white race. There are other races, and we can pinpoint their origin and their existence. So for the lack of the terminology or phraseology race, I would just simply speak of originality and the original man, which we can't find no beginning, and from all indications there is no ending. So this concept of racism and white supremacy is one of the strongest concepts in the known universe. And if you don't understand it and how it works, anything else other than that you're trying to understand will only confuse you. If you don't understand this and how it works, anything else that you're trying to understand will only confuse you. So it is imperative that all non-white people understand the sociological construct of this concept called racism and white supremacy and how it works, so that they can insulate themselves from it and not be a victim of it.
Well, do you think that they can, I guess what my question is, do you think that it will be possible to either insulate themselves while ignoring the plight of the black members of the human family? Because I personally, believe from what I've seen and what I've read that we are in the most need of a healing. We are in the most disadvantaged position in society. So I feel like there are other nations who speak on white supremacy, or they try to narrow it down to white male supremacy, which I believe is false, but that's another topic. But I feel like not as a greater society, we haven't really embraced the concept of assisting the black members of the human family, specifically.
All right. I understand your question. And your question is well put. That's a good question. The answer is even better. See, in the construct of white supremacy, it sets up like a class system. The closer you are to him in proximity, feature-wise, and color, he gives greater benefits. So therefore, the brown man, the red man, the yellow man, they receive more gratuities. They receive more accessibilities. They are they have more economic advantage. So they are very slow in assisting the black man, because the black man and woman represents the greatest threat to white supremacy in its polarity. So therefore, all these are members of the non-white family, but they don't suffer to the degree that the black man and woman suffers. So therefore, they don't feel the urgency of addressing this issue as aggressively as they can and should, because the psychological aspect of white supremacy, it confused all of its victims, because a threat of injustice anywhere is a threat for justice everywhere for all non-white people. If he can eliminate the black man, the brown man is not going to be a problem. The red man is not going to be a problem. And those other people of lighter hues and complexion who doesn't have the necessarily the strength and the resolve of the black man, he will take them out without a problem because they don't have the ingenuity, the strength, the resistance. But this black man, he knows, have the capability of eclipsing, neutralizing, and incapacitating him to wherein we can make this concept become null and void.
So if, as far as the idea of these whole, because I know there's like this new age philosophy in this era, and there's like a whole bunch of wave of enlightenment and spirituality. As far as those people go, do you agree with the fact that we're never going to reach this universal shift in the human consciousness while ignoring what's going on with the black family members of the human family?
Oh, yes, I do agree. I do agree. You can try to play around this issue and pretend that it doesn't exist and that it's not of any great urgency. They can all become Academy Award winners in this stage play as though this is no real matter to be alarmed about. All they doing is
going in circles.
Yeah, going in circles, and they're setting themselves up for failure.
I agree.
Brother Rob, let me ask you, Brother Rahman. I hear a lot of Neely Fuller and what you're saying. I hear a lot of Dr. Francis Creswell saying. How important is it for us as a people to establish a code? Because that's something that we have not done. As Dr. Claude Anderson says, we exhibit a lot of inappropriate behavior. So I think a code is paramount for us to even, that's like the basis of getting anywhere. So how important do you feel is it for us to establish a code?
Oh, Brother Marcus, I'm so glad you mentioned Professor Neely Fuller. I talked to him on a regular, and I knew before she made her transition, I knew Dr. Francis Creswell. And these scholars, that's why I say we have to be able to look at our predecessors, and we have to be able to synthesize the finest minds of those people have been in the struggle long before we have. And we have to take everything that we can from them, incorporate it in the now, and take it and move it for the next generation that will come after us. So it is very important, brother, that we have a code. And in keeping it in a simplistic form, a code simply is a way of doing things. Exactly. There should be things that we do and things that we don't do. We should never commit acts of aggression in killing one another or anyone else other than in self-defense. And even if it's in self-defense, we have to regret that it even had to get to that point. That's what a righteous man, a righteous people, because whenever we take any life unjustly, not only was that act an unjust abstraction of life for that individual who no longer is there, that act of injustice was committed to you and I, because we're supposed to be studying everything that's living while we're living. We'll never be able to interact with Trayvon Martin again and learn from Trayvon Martin or Ezell Ford or Mr. Brown, the brother in Ferguson, or Emmett Till or Dr. King or Malcolm. We're supposed to be studying everything that's living while we're living. So when you kill anything unjustly, you committed an unjust act for me. I can never sit under the tutelage of Dr. King. I can never learn nothing from Trayvon Martin. We're supposed to be intercoursing and interacting with everything that's living while we're living. So when a race soldier or white supremacist murders anyone of any member of the human family, or any animal, or any mammal, or anything that is living, he has committed an unjust act to you and I, because he's deprived us of what we were supposed to learn by studying that particular situation. Now, getting back to your key question, yes, we need a code, brother. See, we're not codified. See, we don't have everything that we do each morning. It's a riotous way of living. We don't know what the next day we don't have an agenda for this day, the next day, or the next day. Our life is one big roll of dice. It's a riotous way of living. And you cannot make any advancement unless you have order and a code. The first law of motion is order. Anything you set in motion, you got to put it in order. And if we don't have no order in our lives, everything is so running in different directions. Our priorities are misappropriated. Our interests, our value system, our culture is distorted. The umbrella of white supremacy produces so much disharmony that it literally disorientates us, so we don't have a code by which we live by. And since that's the case, then we're picked off. We deviate in different directions. So yes, we have to be codified with concepts, brother. And education is a key concept. Spirituality, morality, principality, all of the things that is necessary for the human being to advance into the consciousness of the Creator is absolutely necessary. We're supposed to be evolving into the universal order of all truth. And the only way that we can do that, we have to have a rational mind. In order to have a rational mind, you have to have the ability to utilize deductive and deductive reasoning. You have to utilize the highest order of truth, and the highest order of truth is logic. And the white man does not want us to think according to logistics. He wants us to be emotional beings because he can control us by controlling the emotions. So we're easy to manipulate as long as we do not have a code. So yes, I concur and agree with you, brother. We must be codified. And any beginning is a good beginning. Professor Neely Fuller's book is an excellent book. It's called The Code. Understanding Racism.
Compensatory Code Book.
The Compensatory Code Book. It's definitely suggested reading material, such as the ISIS papers, such as The Destruction of Black Civilization by Chancellor Williams, Hakeem Atabutu, Message to the Black Man by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. There's so many different suggested books of reading material that can set us on the course. But the greatest book that we must read is studying the universe itself. That is the handwriting and the penmanship of the Creator himself. And you can't go wrong when you study life. When you study the universal order and everything working in harmony, that's a book that cannot be altered, distorted, or changed. So we have to mature to the point where we can read the mother book, and that is studying life itself.
So I have a two-part question. My first question is, so as far as us codifying ourselves, do you believe that we can do that as a unit, or is that something that has to start on a personal level? And I say that because I feel like, I know for me, I try to practice like change starts with you. But at the same time, black people are suffering attacks and, genocide, gentrification, everything is still going on and at an exponential rate. So it's also like, do you believe that there's a way that we can all as one unison codify, or does it have to happen on a person-by-person basis and they just impact the people that they encounter along the way?
I think the first change always starts with the individual. The individual have to look at him or herself and realize the condition that they're in and the collective condition that their people are in. And they have to make up their minds as an individual. And then after they, as an individual, it has to be a systematic effort by a collective body of people and an individual. Once I, as an individual, determine what I'm going to do, how I'm going to live my life, the do's and the do-nots, then I seek out other people who also share that way of thinking. And then we expand and we expand. Then we have a community of people that are thinking parallel with each other. And when you have communities together, communities can declare that we are now a nation. But it starts with the individual. Such as white supremacy, it started with an individual. Some white man at some place in time looked around and said, wow, there's a lot of people on this planet. And they have different hues and shades of color. And it seemed as though they outnumber us. So if we don't come up with a concept to confuse them, we will be consumed by them. So that one man, whoever he may have been, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad speaks of certain a time frame in which that was born. Chancellor Williams speaks of a certain time frame in which it was constructed. Some of our most critical thinkers have attempted to pinpoint the time frame. But it started with some individual person
Mm-hmm.
that determined that, listen, all of these people with different colors, we're outnumbered. If we don't come up with a concept to confuse them and put them in a form of subjugation, we will be consumed by them. Thus, the concept of white supremacy was born.
Okay.
It started in the mind of an individual, it expanded, other minds embraced it, until it became a conglomeration.
You're saying that it always starts with the individual, but once that is put into motion, the force that can accelerate once you
Yes.
get with like minds.
Yes.
And okay. So my next question is, because I did a preview with my audience about, just to give them a little more insight about what this podcast will be about and what, we would discuss. And I did mention logic because I've heard you speak before about, logic and universal order and how logic has come with the universe. So with that being said, do you feel, I know I personally feel like logic is underrated as far as when it comes to spirituality, because I feel like a lot of people consist logic with just like intellect, and I feel like logic is more spiritual. It's more something that you feel when you know that it's right. Like you were saying before about if you're thirsty, then you get water. That's logic. That's something that's innately that's in you. So I feel like as far as for the Black community, we feel like if we embrace this concept of logic, that we'll lose our spirituality or our connection to the universe. But logic is what actually connects us to the universe, right?
Absolutely correct. We can't lose what we already have. Spirituality is only means the energy of life, the life force. We're born with that. We don't have to go looking for something that we already have. However, logic is the highest order of truth. Inductive and deductive reasoning. All through life, one has to know how to add, multiply, subtract, and divide. If I'm in the midst of individuals, and these individuals are discussing or speaking about something that is relatively destructive, that has no aim, no purpose, and no direction, I must practice division. I must separate myself because it's of no constructive value. This particular setting that I find myself in is of no constructive value. If I'm amongst people that are talking about things that are related to constructive issues and relating to issues that can positively affect the change of the lives of the human family, then I must add to that conversation. I must multiply. So all through life, what I'm saying, you have to be able to add, multiply, subtract, and divide. And that is thinking mathematically and thinking according to, as my brother stated, a code that we have to have. It's like a safe, a combination. 3 to the left, 4 to the right, 23 to the left, and the safe opens. That's a code. You got to know the code as to how to live. The Black man has been intellectualized out of his originality, and he doesn't understand the codification of life. And the white man understands that he doesn't understand. And he takes advantage of our lack of understanding because he has given us what he wants us to know in the way of information. And anytime a person don't treat you right, they'll never teach you right. So we've been fed a steady diet of lies from the womb to the tomb, from the cradle to the grave, by our no good rotten foster father. Now this Caucasian white man understands that the universe has already spoken. Whether we get in harmony with the universal order or not, the change is going to come anyway, because the Creator, whoever you want to identify him as being, he couldn't be who he claimed to be if he can't perfect his own creation. I'm saying that he, the God force, or the supreme intelligence, or the divine mind, whatever adjective you want to use to describe this intelligence that is governing life, if he can't perfect his own creation, which means to eliminate white supremacy, if he can't perfect his own creation, then he's not who he claimed to be. And I take back every prayer I ever uttered to him. But I know instinctively he's capable, and he is doing that right now as we speak. However, he wants us to be the vessels by which to accelerate it. There's so much wisdom in creation that I can look at that sun, the moon, the star, the ocean, and whoever is navigating that can destroy all life. This 3/4 of this earth planet consists of water. White supremacy can come to an end in a splitting of an eye if it were the decision of the Creator to do it. If he wanted to do it now, in a twinkling of an eye, it can happen. But that's not the way he wants it done, because it can be done that way. He wants those of us who've been the victims of white supremacy to be the catalyst of consciousness to address it and do it. And he'll give us the will, the energy, and he'll give us the jurisdiction to act in his behalf, to attack it and neutralize it and incapacitate it. Because the universe is saying to Marcus, the universe is saying to Amir and Rahman, give me a political expression. The universe talking. Give me an economic expression. Give me a social expression on the dimension in which you live. And by the way, when you begin to embark upon this, you're going to run into a concept called white supremacy. It has no legitimacy nowhere in creation. Get rid of it. And if it attempts to place you into the unknown universe, then you have the authority of creation to use whatever means that is at your disposal to incapacitate it and to make it disappear. See, in white supremacy, the power base of it, one of the power base is that it constructs law, so-called law, really rules and directives. White man cannot produce law because he's not interested in justice. Law is a concept that deals with justice.
Right.
Within the construct of the so-called law, it gives the white man, who is the administrator of white supremacy, permission to kill you. Race soldiers that are called police have been given the authority at their own discretion, if there seems to be a dissident of anyone that seems to be going against the quote-unquote code of white supremacy, then you have permission to kill them. And we will back your killing up. So in white supremacy, it gives permission to the white supremacists to kill non-white people, but non-white people cannot kill the white supremacists, according to white law. But according to black law, we can neutralize anything that is attempting to neutralize us. That's according to the divine law. But we don't want to practice the divine law because we feel that the universe cannot back us up against the criminal department of the white power structure. So our faith is so little in the universe and God that we are easily intimidated by this imposter. We are easily intimidated, and he rules us through intimidation. But when you lose the fear of death, when you can come to the psychological resolve with death and take the sting out of death, now you're ready to live. Because you can't be intimidated by jail, prison, poverty, or anything else. Once you understand that death has no true reality, then now you're ready to live. And I guarantee the Caucasian can feel your vibration. And he will find someone else to victimize when he understands that the masses of people have no fear of death. And now we're ready to live. And anything that interferes with our lives, we will take the necessary steps to see to it that it doesn't interfere any longer.
Now, let me ask you, Brother Rahman, kind of piggybacking on that and also piggybacking off the question about the code. It's true that Neely Fuller said that anyone who's non-white is a victim of white supremacy.
Yes, sir.
But I have to ask, how do you feel as though we as black people need to feel more self-interest? Mm-hmm. And self-interest not in the sense of, because you speak about righteousness. We are righteous people, we believe in morality, we love everyone. But how important is it for us to exhibit more self-interest? Because, and it's not to not care about anyone else, but within these other non-white, non-black groups, they begin to adopt a white supremacist mindset.
Yes, sir.
And, them being victims in turn become perpetrators, and we become further victims of other non-white, non-black, non-white groups. So how important is it, do you feel, for us to exhibit self-interest? And that means not to not love everyone, but to focus more on what we need to do as a people.
Okay, I think that it is extremely important because as our beloved brother George Benson and later Whitney Houston said, the greatest love of all is learning to love yourself. The greatest love of all is learning to love yourself. And as the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, the messenger of Allah, has stated, that Islam in essence means I, self, Lord, and Master. So yes, we have to have a greater appreciation as to who we are. We have to have a greater respect for us. And it all begins with us. Once we start loving us, our people, and our people means love knows no boundaries and no limitations. Let me tell you something about this concept called love. Love knows no boundaries and it knows no limitations. Once we start falling in love with each other, the white man knows that whatever we love, if it's ourselves, then we will protect what we love with our very lives. If you can't, you have any children, brother?
I have two 20-month-old girls.
Okay.
So cute.
Brother, if by chance, hopefully this never happens, you came home one day and your home was engulfed with flames, and you saw the fire department there and everyone there, and your two daughters or your offsprings were in that house, and they were crying from within, and you were out, Daddy, Daddy, and the fire departments took a position that this blaze is out of control, that you don't have a fireproof ornament on you, this, that, or the other. Brother, if you love your daughters, which I'm sure you do, you're going in that house, despite the prevailing conditions of the flames. And what is compelling you to do that? Love. The flames represent death. You will challenge death for that which you love. You're not going to hear your babies hollering out, Daddy, help me, and you don't walk in there. Whether you can have nothing on. You taking a chance because love compels you to challenge death. See? For what you love. So in essence, he never wants us to love each other. Because once we start loving each other on the highest level of which love can escalate to, then automatically anything that threatens the existence of what you love, you will automatically go into gear to offensively neutralize that which you love. Now, he saw that in the 60s, in the 70s. He saw the outwardly cultural expression of the afros, the dashikis. And when we saw each other, we developed that handshake. He said, oh, we got a problem. This cultural nationalism is producing black love. These people don't even know each other, and they speak to each other every time they see each other, embrace each other. How you doing today, brother? How you doing today, sister? And these symbols of how they styling their hair and the dashikis and their language, the books and things that they're reading. They say, oh, this is a problem. Because this cultural consciousness is producing this thing called love. So he said, uh-oh, the counterintelligence of white supremacy said, uh-oh, we got to introduce drugs, narcotics, alcoholism, and guns to divert the attention away from love.
And feminism.
And yes, and feminism, so that we can break the power of this love thing. So when they heard the music of that era of time, Sam Cooke, A Change Is Gonna Come, Marvin Gaye, Trouble Man, What's Going On, Curtis Mayfield, We're Moving On Up. He said, uh-oh, In the lyrics of music, it is a political message. And these people are able to get in harmony with the vibrations of creation through music, through song, dance, through attire. It is all a part of cultural nationalism. And if they embrace cultural nationalism, they will evolve into political nationalism. Once they evolve into political nationalism, then they will understand the politics of education, and they may declare themselves as a sovereign nation with full autonomy that doesn't come under the jurisdiction or the constitutional dictates of England, America, France, or any European nation.
Brother Rahman, you mind showing that book to our audience?
Oh, yes, sir. It is called The Politics of Education, suggested reading material. It goes into the thinking, the serious thinking of serious individuals that have built nations and governments on the educational aspects of politics and how you must adopt a way of thinking in order to construct a government. This is a book that I would suggest that anyone read, everyone read, along with Intellectual Warfare. Intellectual warfare is warfare dealing with the mind. Warfare dealing with the mind employs the highest aspect of intellectual prowess that deals with guerrilla warfare. And guerrilla warfare is an unorthodox way of fighting your enemy who has more of a conventional style of fighting. You can't fight him in a straight out confrontational way. You have to fight him in an awkward way that throws him off. And a guerrilla is the only species that can actually fight in the air, through trees, it can swim in the water, and a gorilla can fight on land. So a guerrilla warrior has to be able to struggle and fight on all levels, in the academic arena, in business, in the home. A guerrilla warrior knows how to keep his home clean. A guerrilla warrior knows how to relate to his children and his wife. A guerrilla warrior is a businessman. A guerrilla warrior knows how to destabilize the mechanisms of the institutions of racism, whether it's an economic machine or a political machine. A guerrilla warrior knows how to extract resources from the opposition and cripple the economy of the enemy. So Intellectual Warfare is another good book. Understanding the true understanding of black nationalism is another book that must be read, because nationalism, the root word or the etymological word of nationalism is nation. And if you don't understand the importance of building a nation, then you don't have the complete concept of what we're talking about here. Frantz Fanon of Algeria, one of the most brilliant minds that the African continent has ever produced, he goes into, in Wretched of the Earth, a book written by Frantz Fanon, he goes into what you must embrace as a revolutionary and what you must understand and what price you must be willing to pay. And in Frantz Fanon's writings, no holds are barred. He says everybody is involved in this struggle. Men, women, children, and babies. And when it escalates to the highest level of where it's going to escalate, you can't be no respecter of gender, because the white woman is just as much involved in perpetuating white supremacy as the white man. In fact, without the white woman, white supremacy couldn't have longevity and perpetuity. Every 9 months she lays on her back and she rolls out the military machine of these little babies in which the white man orientates, indoctrinates, and elevates and teaches the concept of white supremacy. So the white woman is a very key component in the perpetuation of white supremacy. And if she doesn't think that it should exist, all she has to do is stop having sex with the Caucasian, and he cannot reproduce himself, and he would just die off through a natural process of aging. But she is a direct beneficiary of white supremacy. That's why she continues to procreate for him. See? Because she knows that these babies will rule our babies. See? So it's an ongoing psychological, intellectual idea that the wickedly wise are able to put together. And this brother understood it. Comrade George Jackson, he speaks on, from a prison, But he was never in prison in his mind. But from the prison, this man was able to transform all the inmates and make them become more serious individuals when it comes to the freedom, the liberation, and the salvation for the disenfranchisement of his people and all oppressed people around the world. This was a scientist that was in prison, and we should never forget this beloved brother, which August represents Black August, and this is where we pay the highest tribute to Brother Comrade.
Where do you say we should start right now? From like where we are right now? Like, do you say like they start reading suggested material, or like where do you think we should start as far as codifying ourselves and actually giving the universe this expression that it's yearning for? Because I do agree with that, and like I was saying earlier, I feel like innately every spiritual being feels it inside of them. They feel that something is off, but they just not quite sure what. I feel like there's a select few who know exactly, or at least aware and are willing to admit it and face it. So where do you think that we begin with as far as giving the universe this expression that it desires?
Well, I think we should begin by turning to the universe itself and recommitting ourselves to be moral agents of the universe. I think that without using the terminology or phraseology prayer, because that's been exploited so bad, I'll say meditation and concentration, which means prayer. We have to turn to the universe. That's the first thing. And we have to recommit ourselves to the order of the universe, that we have deviated, and that we extend our formal apology, and that we will become the heirs of truth, the heirs of justice, the heirs of humanity, harmony, and peace. And we would never allow anyone or anything to divorce ourselves from these principles that governs life itself. Once we make this commitment to the universe, then we have to start politicizing it. We have to give it its inroads into the education. We have to set up man manufacturing plants, women manufacturing plants. We have to have schools where the curriculum is specifically designed to bring out the best in our children, to where it gives them the incentive and motivation to go on to higher learning. And as I said earlier, anytime a man doesn't treat you right, he'll never teach you right. So we have to understand that he has given us the depth of our knowledge and the diameter of our knowledge, and he has prescribed the circumference of our activity, and we're not able to think outside of the circumference. So therefore, the gravitational pull of his psychology keeps us locked down to the orbit of his plane. It's just like gravity. White supremacy is just as powerful as gravity. It keeps the black man and woman locked down. So therefore, the ceiling of gravity is only 6 miles high. In order to defy it, you got to have power boosters, like a rocket. As a rocket is moving out of space, it ignites power boosters that are located on its side. And as it is advancing up, it is mastering gravity. And once it gets beyond the ceiling of gravity, it defies gravity. Now it's out in space. Nothing that's happening in this dimension affects that rocket, because it's not within the gravitational pull of the Earth's motion. So what am I saying? We got to break the gravitational pull of the psychology of the Caucasian and his institutions that help perpetuate it. Now, what has happened and why and where we need to go, number one, I just want to touch on this quickly. When he conquered our fathers during slavery, he showed the black woman, there's nothing to insulate you from my aggression. The strongest thing you had was your man. His blood flows throughout the land. If you want that son of yours to end up like his father, let him go into the thinking of his father. I'll do the same thing to your son that I just did to your man. You got about 5 minutes to decide what you're going to do. Here's my way of life. Here's my belief system. It's up to you to tell that son of yours who I am. Failure to do that, I'll exact the fullness of retribution on your son like I did to your man. So he boxed you into a corner. You capitulated for the most part, and your son became a victim because he never was reminded what happened to his father. So the children have to be educated in a way that reminds them of every historical occurrence that have incapacitated and neutralized the family structure. So in white supremacy, it says that I'm not interested in masculinity. I'm not interested in that son of yours being the same age as his father, which means thinking like a man. I want him to be younger than his mother, which means you got to infeminate him. Once he's infeminated, he becomes non-threatening to white supremacy. Now, I'm going to know whether you're infeminating him or not because I'm going to study him and I'm going to be observant. And I'll know if he's thinking like his father. If he's resisting, challenging, questioning, the residue that was in his father is in him. I'm holding you accountable because you got to make him younger than his mother and not the same age as his father. So we have to understand the importance of thinking like black men. Now back to the key question was whether or not, what steps should we first take? I think what we're doing right now is a good beginning. Any beginning is a good beginning, but we have to have panels of discussion. And once we discuss that this is a complex problem, it forces us now to delve into solutions.
What codes, as a community, do we establish our codes on? Like what grounds? If that makes sense.
It should be on the grounds of nationalism. It should be on the grounds that all of us who are serious about the condition or the problems, we have determined that the white man is disagreeable to live with in peace. And if he is disagreeable to live with in peace, and he is shown that he is disagreeable to live with in peace, and as I've always said, the less contact, the less conflict. Separation solves the problem. The doctrine of separation must be taught. But the separation is just not physically from the white man, it's his mindset, his attitudes, his folkways, his mores, his culture. We have to divorce everything, separate everything that he introduced us to that helps control us. So we have to do a critical analysis of ourselves and ask, am I participating in my own destruction? What stumbling blocks am I setting up myself that is consistently causing me to fall short of my target? See, the white man doesn't necessarily have to be right there amongst us for white supremacy to be taking place. He has programmed us for self-destruction because the idea is in our mind. So we have to be able to come together with small things first. Respect, being productive, keeping your home clean, keeping yourself clean, always committing random acts of kindness. You see a brother that needs help, right there helping him. Sister might be, an elderly woman might be crossing the street with a bag full of groceries. Excuse me, ma'am, may I help you do this? But she's so suspicious. Now she might think she's going to be robbed. So white supremacy has created a lot of unprovoked suspicion amongst us. Even if you try to be kind in some situations, people think that it's a move of some sort that you're getting ready to put down on, because they now not used to kindness.
No trust.
No trust.
No trust.
No trust.
I've seen that.
When you're overly kind, people are like, what's getting ready to go down?
Yeah.
What do you have in mind? Because this is not natural. See, they think that that's not natural, but it really is natural.
Yeah.
You see, so the white man is able to take what is natural and make it unnatural. Take that which is natural or unnatural and make it natural. He just switches roles, just like he takes truth. The universe is nothing but truth, but he takes truth and put it in reverse. And when you take truth and put it in reverse, it becomes falsehood manifest. And when falsehood becomes manifest, it creates an illusion. You buy into the illusion and you give power to the illusion. But the illusion is nothing but an illusion. So it's a lot of deception and trickery in white supremacy as well. White supremacy exists on two levels. And the most effective level is direct and indirect violence. So says Professor Neely Fuller, and I do agree. And indirect violence is deception. If a person deceives you to your detriment, he's practicing indirect violence on you. And direct violence.
So I know you recommended some books. What would be like the very on the top of your list of books that like anyone who's watching this or even myself that we should read once we like leave here or like?
I think Professor Neely Fuller has a profound book called The Code, the Independent Compensatory Code.
The independent compensatory code.
Yes. In essence, understanding racism, white supremacy, and how it works. The reason why I suggest that as first, because it's a very basic book.
Okay.
The writing is very comprehensible.
Okay.
It's very basic. The average person can read that book, and they can have a comprehensive understanding as to what he's saying. Other literature that may be a little more sophisticated, it will discourage the reader to read because they might read a word and not understand what that word means and this, that, and the other. So they sit the book down. But the Code is a very simplistic book.
Okay.
I would say that should be one of the required reading, if not the first. Then, of course, Message to the Black Man. Not that is not a message to the black woman as well, but a message to the black man is what, piggybacking on what, I don't even like to use that term pig, but riding on what Brother Marcus stated, should we focus on self first? Yes. So this message to the black man speaks specifically to what the black man should know. And it's a message. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said of himself, I'm similar to a mailman. I'm just delivering mail. You got to open up your letter and see what the universe or what God is saying to you. I can't even open up your letter. That would be an infringement. I'm only delivering the mail. But I know in the general letter, it speaks of you being a natural man, a true king, and a living God, and that you were thought upon the wind, a drop of blood between your father's rib and backbone. Then you were clot in your mother's womb, and that your existence is compelling and your duration is permanent. That there in itself gives you an understanding of who you are. If your existence is compelling and your duration is permanent, which means you're locked in to life itself. So that message to the black man gives you a spiritual awakening. There's other books that gives you a political awakening. You know, this is an excellent book here, and it talks about Brother Man. See, Brother Man. And Brother Man. And this book here goes into the molecular structure of the atom itself. And how man is mind and mind is man. Okay? And actually man means the master of the atoms of nature. Everything in this universe that we're living in consists of an atom. So man means a master of the atoms of nature. And there's only one thing that can the molecular structure of this table composed of various atoms. We're breathing in atoms right now. Everything in the visible universe consists of some type of atom. But the most dominating atom is the mind. Because I can change the molecular structure of this table and convert it into something different. I can change the molecular structure of that metal and make it melt like water. The mind of man can master every atom in the known universe. So man means a master of the atoms of nature. Now, how many of us are thinking on how to master the condition of atoms that are around us? We can't even master how to keep a house clean, how to keep ourselves clean. We can't even master how to be respectful. We haven't even mastered how to structure the basic unit of the family. So we have to get on the course of mastery, because that's what a man really means. A man is not an arm, it's not a gender, it's not a leg. A man is a mind. And there are inferior minds and there are superior minds. There's infinite minds and there's finite minds. A finite mind can never comprehend the thoughts of one mind who's infinite. So the Caucasian has dumbed us down so low that we don't have a comprehensive understanding of his mind. It's not that he's so sophisticated that he can't be understood. He's really a very simple kind of guy. Mm-hmm. But he's dangerous because he has tools called weapons, and he will not hesitate to kill. But he's not no true scholar when it comes to truth. See, and that's where our power base is, in truth. In fact, he knows very little about how the universe and life works, but he knows how to threaten life, and it intimidates us because he knows how to boast of what he can do in the way of killing. Mm-hmm. So that produces fear, hesitation, trepidation, and reservation, and we end up settling for less. So it's psychological warfare, and that's why the books by this brother, Intellectual Warfare, it too is a must-read material. This is a must-read material. And our beloved brother, Malcolm X, the FBI, through the Freedom of Information Act, disclosed how they created the climate of dissension between him and the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, and how they were looking for the birth of a black messiah, and how they thought it was Fred Hampton, Huey Newton, Eldridge Cleaver, H. Rap Brown, Dr. Maulana Karenga, Malcolm X, Dr. King. So the white man, he has determined long ago that if he has a problem, there's only three ways to solve the problem. Either you got to scare it off, buy it off, or kill it off. They had to kill this problem off. They had to kill Dr. King off. So we're dealing with a dangerous individual that will not hesitate to kill.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%, and I thank you so much for extending your time, but also your knowledge and your energy that you put into not only to be on the show, but for the very first episode. I think it's going to be very enlightening for the audience and for the viewers out there. And I just wanted to reiterate to you all that I named this show Change is Gonna Come for exactly what he said. I don't know if you all caught when he mentioned a few moments ago that change is absolute in this world. That's one of the few things that we're guaranteed. So a change is going to come. It's not just a song, or it's not something I'm saying to try to give you guys hope or inspiration. It's a fact. Change is going to come. Now, where you're going to be on that side of the change is up to you and your influence and what you decide to do with your influence. Because we all have influence as living beings. Every time we go out into the world and encounter other living beings, we have influence. And so the point of this show is just to use the influence that we have and to influence the change that we know that is going to come, and attempts to provide the universe with the expression that it desires, and to provide other enlightened or aware beings with the shift that they also desire for the universe as well. So I hope you all enjoyed the first episode, and I hope you all tune in for the next one. It's going to be titled Say It Loud. And it's exactly what it sounds like. We're going to be discussing, Black pride, but not in the hostile sense, but why, Black pride is beneficial for the universe. Everything that we talk about on this show, I want to show to everyone why, the advancement and the advancement in the condition of the black members of the human family, why it's beneficial for the whole universe. We all know that as one person heals, the world around them heals. So if we have a nation as disenfranchised and disadvantaged as the black nation heal, then, the universe around us is, it has no choice but to benefit. So I hope you all enjoyed. And I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to get to the audience engagement questions, but I will be going live once I launch this, so you guys can ask your questions then, and hopefully we can have Brother Rahman and other like-minded, individuals come on and feed us some more knowledge. Peace.
Peace.
Peace.